I'm very happy to have Felix Gaedtke and Gayatri Parameswaran here. That was made possible by Kathleen, which called me and said, I have this wonderful project and you have to bring it to Beyond. And we were now able to show your project, and now you are able to explain it to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
And of course, thank you, Ludka, for inviting us, and Kathleen for suggesting us and our project to come here. So yeah, we are here to speak today about Home After War and use it as a case study to show how we use VR to tell stories of humanitarian crisis, in this case in Iraq, and stories of war.
And before we start, I think I just want to start out saying that, you know, when I was young and growing up in Bombay, my grandmother would tell me stories every night I went to bed. And it's been almost 25 years that I haven't heard these stories, but I still remember them. And I think all of you might have some of these stories that you take with you, and many of these stories that stay with you. And as creators and storytellers, we really believe in the power of stories. We believe that we tell stories to each other, and that creates tradition, and that creates our histories, and that creates societies and culture. And that's at the sort of backbone of all the work that inspires us. As journalists and documentary makers, the biggest focus for us is human rights, its conflict and post-conflict, as well as social justice and the environment. And since, I have to say, our collaboration and our storytelling studio actually is going to turn 5 years old. And since the last 2 years, we've, sorry, I'm shorter than most speakers here, so. So since the last couple of years, we've been experimenting with immersive technologies, with virtual reality and augmented reality, and really trying to use the power of these immersive technologies together with storytelling for our journalism and documentaries.
Yeah, so as I said, we will present today Home After War. It is the story of a father who lost 2 sons in an explosion in an accident in Fallujah, and it was done in collaboration with the Geneva International Center for Humanitarian Demining, which is a mouthful. Nevertheless, they're an NGO that has a lot of expertise in the field and helped us really to narrow down on the area we wanted to work in, and generally helped us with their expertise. And yeah. We will show you now our trailer just to give you some idea of what we're talking about if you haven't seen the installation yet. Is there sound?
You know our house is our home.
We don't have sound here.
Wait a second.
When ISIS came here, I heard fighting between them.
I think I forgot to plug the sound. Which?
Danke.
It's funny to see the suggestions on YouTube.
You know our house is our home. When ISIS came here, I heard fighting between them and the security forces. Bombs were falling from planes. We took the car and fled. We said that we are going home, even if that meant we had to live on the rubble, because we were fed up with being strangers. We heard that there were houses where the electricity was booby-trapped. If you see a bomb, you would usually recognize it. But this stuff is new. They were my wings.
So, as you can tell, the story is quite a tragic and a heavy issue to work on, and our partnership with the Geneva International Center for Humanitarian Demining defined the topic. So we knew that we wanted to do something about landmines, about improvised explosive devices, and in areas of post-conflict. As we started researching the issue, we realized that there were 3 countries in the world that were the most affected when it came to IEDs. Afghanistan was at the top of the list. Iraq was also at the top of the list, followed by Syria. And I have to mention here that the research is also questionable, because I think in Afghanistan there has been way more research that has happened in the past years, and in Iraq and Syria, where there are ongoing conflicts, it's hard to actually estimate how many IEDs there are. So some experts actually say that Iraq and Syria are probably the worst affected, while the established research might still show Afghanistan at the top of the charts. When we started speaking to experts who were, clearing these mines in these areas in Iraq and in Syria and around the Middle East, we realized, especially in Iraq, that they had an unprecedented challenge. They were telling us that they didn't know how to deal with refugees or IDPs, internally displaced people coming back home and finding IEDs in their neighborhoods and in their homes. And in the homes, these bombs were in the form of booby traps. So someone would come in to their home after having left for 1 or 2 years for the war, and when they came back, they could open the door and there would be an explosion, or they would turn on a light switch and something could blow up. So these were like really well calculated sort of booby traps in people's homes, and something that even mine experts were not really equipped to deal with in such a large scale.
So, as Gayatri described the background a bit, the idea for us, what was really interesting from like a psychological way of looking at it, for most of us, I believe, coming home creates a feeling of safety. It's a feeling of security. It's somewhere where we feel safe and secure. And for many of these IDPs who have now spent 3-4 years in refugee camps, of course we're looking forward to come home and finally be somewhere where they have this feeling. Nevertheless, for them, it's very ambivalent, because it is not only that they are looking forward to come home, which of course they do, but they are also not sure what awaits them. And in a lot of the reporting about war and conflict, it's always this like duality that plays a role, where one is either at war or at peace. Whereas in this case, it really shows that wars are something that can drag on for a very long time and can affect people for many years. And in order to create this peace, we knew that, similar to what we heard in some presentations earlier, that presence in that particular space was really crucial to really make people feel how it is to come home in this context.
And I guess that's why we chose to use virtual reality in order to get that sense of presence. And so we decided, as documentary makers and documentary artists, our job is to also go and be able to document what happens. So we decided to go to Iraq. And access was actually quite a difficult issue in terms of getting visas to get there. So at the start, we said we will be going to Mosul, because that was one of the most affected places. And we wanted to access Mosul through northern Iraq, through Kurdistan. So flying into Erbil and then going to Mosul. But around that time, in September 2017, I think, Kurdistan decided to have an independence referendum, which made our work harder, only in terms of that there were no flights going into Erbil, which meant we couldn't really access that route, which meant we had to go through Baghdad. And going through Baghdad meant dealing with bureaucracy that is the Iraqi central government, which was harder than dealing with going directly into Kurdistan. There were also, of course, security issues. Our research showed that we could access the story in Fallujah, which is in Anbar province, and that is the birthplace of ISIS. And we could not stay overnight in Fallujah because all the experts that we were speaking to said it's not safe enough because there are still ISIS sleeper cells, and there weren't even hotels that were functioning where we could stay overnight in Fallujah. So every day we would go from Baghdad to Fallujah. And for that we also had military convoys because our sources said that it's better to have military convoys with us in order to move in the region. And especially the army insisted that they wanted to come with us, perhaps to check what we were doing, but also perhaps to just make sure that, nothing, I would just trust their intention to some extent. So that was the security, but sometimes it also made it harder to function with 3 military convoys driving into a neighborhood. And you can imagine that in a place that has been militarized for so long, that can be quite intimidating if you arrive with something like this. So it took a longer time for us to work with the security situation, at the same time being able to gain the trust of the people that we were, or the community that we wanted to reach.